Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
You know, we've been lied to. We really have. We've been lied to. I had a conversation with a guy, and you know, where have we been lied to? We've been lied to about sales. We've been told for years that sales is this messy thing that, you know, you just only the perfect person can do. Somebody who just loves rejection. I had a conversation with a guy, and he shared his story. And he was in corporate America, like many people. He's in corporate America, and got tapped on the shoulder, not for a gold watch, but the pink slip. And they sent him packing, and, you know, he's trying to find something new, getting back into the corporate environment, you know, doing whatever, finance or logistics or whatever, just a corporate job, you know, a couple paychecks a month kind of a thing. And going to church, and somebody at church said, you know, you ought to come work with us. I think you'd really be good. We have a sales position open. And he said, no. I'm, you know, I don't, you know, he had this lie, right? That what sales was and should be is this very antagonistic, very in your face sort of a thing. And he told the guy, you know, that's just not me. And he says, the person he was talking to said, you've got the wrong message. You know, he didn't say you've been lied to. That's my thing. But he said, you got the wrong message. What sales is about making friends and then serving your friends. And that was 30 years ago. And he's had a wonderful sales career just buying, you know, ignoring the lie, if you will, understanding that the lie is a lie. So today I have on the program, not that person, but I have Jeff West on the program with me. He has over 30 years in sales leadership, and entrepreneurship. He's a writer, speaker, leadership coach. He's coming out, or just recently came out, with a book called Streetwise to Saleswise: Become Objection Proof and Beat the Sales Blues. And he co-authored that with Bob Burg, who is a friend of the podcast. Bob was my 100th episode. Jeff has another book out called The Unexpected Tour Guide, and Said the Lady with the Blue Hair, who he co-authored with direct sales legend Lisa M. Wilbur. He's received Global Book Awards. He's a best-selling author, and he's been a guest on numerous sales and leadership shows, and is a member of the Go Giver Success Alliance with Bob Burg and Kathy Tagenel. I don't know if I got that right, or was I close, Jeff?
It was close. All
close. Right. Kathy, I love you. So anyhow.
Tagenel,
thank you. I guess give me, you know, we've got a little bit here in the bio, but you know, your journey. Nobody comes out of college. If you went to college, nobody comes out of high school. Most people went to high school, and all of a sudden they're a leadership trainer, coach, sales genius. Give us the nickel tour.
Well, you know, thanks, Frank, for having me on. It is such an honor to be on your podcast. My journey was exactly like your typical salesperson's journey, I'm sure. I started off in college, and in my case, I got a bachelor's degree in music education and a master's degree in music composition. So I was one of those people that I had no idea, no intention of going into sales whatsoever. Probably a good deal amount of it was because of the similar mindset as the story you told when you opened up the episode. I had zero desire to be pushy. I had zero desire to be confrontational. And I felt like that was kind of the sales persona because I really didn't have that much exposure to it. But as I finished my degree, my wife had needed to finish up her degree, and there were no teaching jobs open in the area. And so I've sometimes said by default, but really I look at it more like divine providence. I ended up taking a sales position at that time with a musical instrument company. And the very first year I made 50% more than I would make teaching. And then I got a promotion, and it just kept going from there. And I started off in the Georgia and Alabama area in that industry. Ended up going into the industrial uniform industry for 3 years in Georgia. Then I got a promotion. I was one of the top people in the nation. Came out to Texas and started a new branch out here. And without going through all the details, because it's a reasonably short podcast, that company got bought out, and so I ended up in the insurance industry. And I did well over 20 years with an insurance Fortune 500 insurance company. And between the industrial uniform company and the insurance industry, that's really where I learned what a salesperson's supposed to be. And it's someone who really is providing value. I believe if you look back at the actual term of a salesman, what the definition, the original was to serve. And so as I grew in my experience at sales and as I grew in my education, I quickly learned that if I was hardworking, if I developed a skill set so that I knew how to respond in several scenarios, and if I would go out there and find the people who actually needed something in their life that my company could provide, that was more like a matchmaker. I helped them by helping them get what they needed. I helped the company that was paying me because that's how they made their business work. And I got paid for standing in the middle and making that connection happen. Once I understood that, it was like going out and playing with people from that point forward.
Yeah, I was indoctrinated, not indoctrinated. Well, here's let's step back. I think college does a great job of preparing people for those rank and file jobs. That's what
Right.
it's really about. And sales probably gets a bad rap in college because nobody understands it. None of the professors do it. None of them teach it.
Right.
And so, nobody's really pointing people in that direction. It's certainly a noble profession. I've always been of the mind that you you that sales is not about trying to convince somebody of something that they don't need. And I think
Absolutely.
that's the lie, right? It's like, okay, I've got to sell ice cream to this Eskimo or ice cubes to this Eskimo. You know, um, no, you don't. What you're doing is you're selling a coat to an Eskimo, right? I mean, it's just something they need.
True.
You still have
True.
to why the coat. Why my coat? Why not somebody else's coat? Um,
Right.
but you and Bob have come out with this book, and it's a fable. But one of the points you guys make is you say you should never try to overcome objections, uh, um, which I sort of get, right? Based on what I just said, but there still are objections. There's price, there's terms, there's all sorts of things. If you don't try to overcome objections, how do you ever advance the sale?
That's such a great question. And that is one of the concepts that I believe can really make or break someone's longevity in the sales career. Because when you think about it, no one likes to be overcome. No one likes to be overcome with an illness and an argument, anything of that nature. And when you're in a sales conversation and someone does give you an objection, and we know we're going to get them, that's kind of almost like a form of their own opinion. And if you need to go no further than our political climate
Yeah.
in the US right now to know people don't want their opinions overcome. That makes them uncomfortable. It does all kinds of damage to the relationship. So what we teach is instead of trying to overcome that objection, let's flip the screen a little bit. Let's reset that frame and think differently about it. And so what we coach salespeople to do, what we teach in the book in Streetwise to Saleswise, is rather than try to overcome that objection, let's find out more. Let's work within it. And there's a step-by-step process that we teach in the book where basically the first step is to ask questions to make sure you understand what their real objection is. You control your own emotions first, but then when you go into it, you want to ask questions so that you can really get a grasp of what their real issues is. Sometimes it's what they've said, but sometimes that's just a surface level symptom or a surface level expression of something that's going on underneath. But then, after you've asked the questions to make sure you understand, think about it from their perspective. Empathize with them. Let them know, hey, I get how that could be something that you'd want to consider and want to think about. Because whether if it's a price issue and they're running a business, it may be about the budget of the business, but you empathize with their concern. You get You make sure they know that you're trying to find out, and then you understand their concern. And then you ask permission to ask a few more questions, something along the lines of, if I may, could I ask a couple of questions to find out exactly why that's an issue? And so you work through that process. And then once you understand that what the issue is from their perspective, then you slightly tilt the frame. You reframe the whole issue in a way where you're trying to work with them to find a solution to the problem. Because if they weren't sitting there talking with you, 9 times out of 10, there's no issue that they've got to deal with. But the fact they're sitting there visiting with you, even if they haven't really gotten comfortable with your solution yet, that means they have a challenge they would like to see overcome. So once you shift that frame, you can maybe show some solutions to that issue and do it in such a way that sometimes you'll completely uh, resolve it in their mind where they feel like they're very comfortable moving forward. Sometimes you'll be able to neutralize it in such a way that even if it's not a perfect solution, it will meet their needs. A great example of this that we point out in the book is in the real estate industry. If a realtor is working with a potential client and the client loves the house, and then it's kind of getting toward that end point, and the client says, well, I'm thinking this may be too far from town. Well, what we teach in the book is basically control your emotions, but then ask questions. Could you tell me a little bit about what being in town means to you versus being out here, what the difference would be? And they'll start talking about the things that they enjoy about being close to services, close to doctors, movie theaters, restaurants, whatever. And then when you are able to find out what the real issue is, then it gives you the opportunity with them to find solutions. Maybe there's something going on where there's expansion coming into that area that's going to bring more services in. But what it does too, it actually sets up something else we teach in the book. It sets up a fusion point, which is where you're combining a positive emotional experience or emotional response that they have with the logic of what you're trying to go forward with. And when you actually approach their objection, rather than trying to overcome it, and well, they said this and I said that, and it becoming more like a ping pong match, when you're truly interested in helping them by asking, explain exactly what that means to me and try to help them find a solution, not only do you give them the chance that that issue gets resolved, you also bond with them in a way that cements that relationship as you go forward. And there's more than just a business relationship at that point. There's a kindred spirit, almost a friendship that develops very quickly.
You said a couple of things. Well, you said the same thing a couple of times. And I kind of want to explore it a little bit. Control your emotions.
Mhm.
And I think that's so key. I had said, okay, selling is presenting something that somebody needs. Hey, you're an
Right.
Eskimo. You don't need ice cubes. You need a coat.
Right.
And then when they hit you with an objection, then it's this risk of loss, and we're all very
Right.
human. Um, how do you control your emotions? Especially somebody trying to make quota. And that's a whole nother conversation. But it's I've finally gotten in the door. I finally have a conversation with Miss or Mr. Decision Maker, and they're throwing something up at me that I didn't anticipate. And it
Right.
was a 6 month journey to get here.
Right. Well, that probably kind of the unique thing about controlling your emotions, especially for salespeople, especially when their career longevity really hasn't happened. But I've seen veterans do the same thing. What happens when you get that unexpected objection from a prospect? It sets off something in your brain. It's that anxiety, it's that fear that it's not going to happen. It's okay. How do I respond? There's a lot of going on in the mind, but where the problem occurs is the thing that's going on in the part of your brain that processes the emotion immediately sets off a somatic marker inside you. You feel something. It could be that your chest gets a little tight. It could be your stomach gets butterflies. It's any number of issues. Quite frankly, it's the exact same issue that will sometimes hit a salesperson when they're having call reluctance. And it can kill a sales career if they don't understand what's going on. But that somatic marker is something it's a physiological feeling. When you understand that, and then when you're in that process and you you realize what's going on. It gives you the ability to be self-aware about it, so you can take a couple of breaths and you can realize, okay, that's just a feeling that's going up here. It has nothing to do because nothing's really happened yet.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, it gives you the opportunity to relax a little bit, then to ask questions, because one of the reasons that salespeople get that emotional response is because they're not sure exactly how they're going to respond yet. Because canned replies to objections, just as a rule, in my opinion, after 30 something years, they're not necessarily the best way to go, because I believe in more of a structured improvisation. So you need to know where you're going, but it's got to be a little bit of improvisation there. But when you ask questions, they'll almost guide you through what the real issue is. So one of the best ways that you can control your emotions when that's happening is take a couple of deep breaths, have some questions in mind, and start asking questions so that you're focused on them. Because as a salesperson, if our focus is on that prospect during the sales conversation, that alone relaxes us, because we're not focused on our quota. We're not focused on our income. We're not focused on our commissions. We're focused on, okay, how can I help the person in front of me? How can I make their world better because of what I'm doing? And as you ask those questions, you'll start to feel yourself relax, and it gives you the opportunity to do that. But take a couple of deep breaths, ask some questions, and listen to get your ears to working.
Yeah, what I tend to do, and I think we all run into these moments. I mean, there are two types of people: people who run into these moments, and liars, right? I mean, we all, nobody closes everything, right?
Right.
Um, and what I tend to try to tell myself, and again, it's, you're overcoming a very basic, human reaction.
Right.
My response, my internal response is, okay, it's not a no, it's just not now,
Right.
and kind of step back and realizing that, you know what, I need business tomorrow too, or next week.
Right.
So I'm not going to burn this bridge. And um, so, yeah, no, great stuff. Control your emotions. Um, One of the things that I wanted to talk about was the gatekeeper. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, the nasty gatekeeper. And I've seen some things from Bob Berg, and it talks about it in the book. But if let's talk about the gatekeeper. And um, I know what Bob says. Bob's not here. You go for it.
Oh,
Sorry,
well,
Bob.
that's all right. And Bob would be the first to tell you that's part of that was, we've got both of our training in the book, and that
Yeah.
one actually came from me anyway. But
Okay.
the whole idea of the way sales people are trained as a rule, from usually their first day in whatever training school that they're given through their company they're working with, that you'll hear them start using the term gatekeeper, gatekeeper, gatekeeper. That in and of itself sets up the salesperson's mind in such a way that they're anticipating an adversarial relationship with that person. Sometimes it's that administrative assistant as you first walk in a door or you first make the phone call. Sometimes it's not that person. Sometimes it's someone who's in middle management somewhere who's charged with getting a project together, and you're a piece of that puzzle. And so the whole mindset, if you're walking into it with a feeling that you're about to deal with an adversary, it puts the salesperson on edge. And every time you do that, you put that person in front of you on edge as well. So the whole idea of turning the gatekeeper into, which could be an adversary, into what I refer to as a key holder, the person who can unlock the kingdom for you if they're on your side, an ally, is very simply with a mindset shift,
I love it.
because it's that simple. Go ahead.
No, I love it because that's
Yeah.
absolutely it. I mean, if you um, unrelated but related, right? I've got a friend out there. He's a sports psychologist, and he tells the story of when he was a grad student. He his name Dr. Rob Bell. He worked for a baseball coach, and the baseball coach didn't pay him, and he hated the man for years. And he realized that, you know what, this is not productive. So he
Right.
wrote the guy a Christmas card. Sent him a Christmas card, handwritten note. Hope you're doing well. But I didn't talk anything about the money, but that just changed his whole thought process on the person. And then the person warmed up to him, and they have a good relationship now. It's
Right.
all in your head.
Absolutely. And when you focus your attention on how the person in front of you at any part of your sales process, how their life gets better because you're in it, then it immediately changes their perception as well. If you use phrases that direct their attention there. In my case, the majority of my career was in the insurance industry. And so I knew with what we did that it was very financially beneficial to each employee when I would be calling on a company, that if we were there and they needed us, I knew what it did. I worked claims. I helped people get their jobs. I mean, I helped people get their money from the company. And so when I first started making sales calls, and I would say, well, I'm Jeff West with the insurance company that I was with, and you immediately start getting pushback. But when I began to understand, okay, I don't need to be talking so much about that, although I will mention the company name and all, but can I focus on how that person's life gets better? And so that's when my focus changed. And I'll be honest, even though that is part of my training, I tell Bob this all the time. I actually began to develop that mindset when I read his book, Endless Referrals, back in the year 2000, which was a day or two ago now.
Yeah, a decade
But
or two ago now.
yeah, really. But he did such a great job in there of getting you to understand that to focus on how the person you're visiting with, the person that you are having the conversation with at any point in your sales cycle, your focus needs to be on how they benefit from doing what you're asking them to do. So when I began to approach companies in the insurance industry, and I was talking to an administrative assistant, normally at the reception desk, when I was focusing on the money that our company provided that could be in their pocket if they were sick or hurt or taking care of a spouse or a child, and I would be able to get the company a tax break based on that, it was like a light switch flipped. And all of a sudden, that person who I used to look at as a gatekeeper or my adversary began to help me meet the right people. And it just made all the difference in how they perceived me. But more importantly, as it changed me, I began to get so much better results. And I think as much it was about how it changed how I looked at things as it was about theirs. And then when I would meet with the owner of the company, it was the same thing. I was focused on how I could help that company. It wasn't about selling insurance products. It was about helping that company in whatever way that we could with their employee turnover, whatever the relationship was. Regardless of the industry, if people can go through a thought process about what they're doing and then begin to develop the verbiage that in every step of the process directs that person's attention to how their world's going to get better because you're there, immediately their perception's different, and then you will start relaxing more and your perception's different as well.
Yeah, it's powerful, powerful. All right, let's switch gears here a little bit. You're an author, you're a speaker. Listeners, go out and buy Streetwise to Saleswise. Become Objection Proof and Beat the Sales Blues by Jeff C. West and Bob Burg. Beyond buying the book, nobody makes money nobody gets rich selling books unless your name's Hillary Clinton or something like that. What else? How else could the audience help you? And how could they get a hold of you?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is always going to be jeffcwest.com. But if you're interested in something like where I will come working with sales teams or with leadership teams, and quite frankly, it doesn't even have to be a sales team. Every company leader, I don't care what the industry, there are times where you have to learn how to make connections with your team. And they're important because as time goes on, you want to be able to influence their decisions to make the company goals happen. Fusion Points is my branding on that. So fusionpoints.com works, jeffcwest.com works. But it's just, as I tell people, my goal when I'm working with any company is to be able to create the kind of environment, whether it's with the prospects in their market, whether it's in the prospects and the sales conversation stuff, with their team, with their administrative staff, to be able to create that environment that, number one, they'll never go work anywhere else, and all things being equal. And number two, you create the position in the marketplace that people want to do business with you. And that's an amazing thing. Once you understand the concepts, it's an amazing thing.
Totally agree. Jeff C. West. Remember, jeffcwest.com. Jeff, I really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure, Frank. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.